Madeon is one of those artists that are like an onion. You have to peel back the layers, and it seems like no matter how many layers you peel back, there are always new layers underneath. I'm not sure if anyone even has any awareness of the bottom layer other than Madeon himself. Today we're going to try to peel back as many layers as possible and immerse ourselves in the world of Madeon. Hugo Pierre Leclercq was born in Nantes, France on May 30th, 1994. He was quite a unique kid and had a fascination with computers and printers. He thought it was cool that you could make something on a computer and then bring it into reality with a printer.
And I think the thing that fascinated me the most was the printer. Because the idea that I could imagine something with my mind, translate it to a computer, and then press a button, and then I would have a physical object that I could fold and put in my bedroom, and it would now exist alongside my toys, alongside my books. It would have as much of a tangible reality as anything else that I owned. Was mind-blowing.
His parents taught him that computers were tools of creation, and this has served him well in life as he began producing music at such an early age. When he was 10 years old, he watched a Daft Punk documentary and immediately decided that he wanted to try his hand at making his own electronic music. He downloaded the audio software Audacity and began working on his own music. He recorded himself making vowel sounds, trying to recreate the iconic Daft Punk vowels. For the drums, he recorded himself banging on the dining room table in his house. He ended up making an entire album with this method, and he burned it to a CD. I wonder if it still exists, because I bet there are a lot of people out there who would pay insane amounts of money for it. Just saying.
And then I printed it on CD and was like, well, I made an album too. It's not good, but I made something, and I'm gonna try again until it's as good as the stuff that I love, you know?
Hugo believes that for him personally, participating in art is the best way to connect with it. He made that first album as a way to better understand Daft Punk and to feel more connected with what they were doing. While we're on the topic of Daft Punk, they were actually the first concert that he ever went to. He got to see the legendary 2007 Alive tour, and he still keeps the ticket in his bedside table to this day.
It was the very first concert I ever attended.
Who brought you? Do you have a cool aunt we need to thank? Or
literally a cool aunt.
Yes!
That's literally what happened. And I had been obsessed with Daft Punk for a couple of years at that point, and it had shaped my life in so many ways already, you know, and so I was very impressionable, and I was very impressed, obviously.
Yeah.
So I actually keep the tickets from the show in my bedside.
Now let's get back into the production side of things. After making that first album, he was immediately hooked and he wanted to learn how to properly produce music. He began messing around with different digital audio workstations, trying out Reason and Cubase, but after using FL Studio, he decided that was the one that he liked the best. He put a lot of time into learning the craft, spending time on forums to learn as much as he could. Once he got the hang of things, he began producing Eurodance, which is also known as hands-up music. He would put his music out online, and he used many different aliases in those early days. There was Wayne Mont, there was Daemon,
à se goinfrer des me porg, souvent des jeunes qui passent leur journée derrière un me porg.
and then there was Earpark. Now, as you probably already know, Madeon is good friends with Porter Robinson, and their friendship began at a very young age. They met on a music production forum in their early teenage years, and they became good friends. According to Hugo, Porter was 15 and Hugo was 13 when they met.
You know, I was 13, 14, something like that. He was 17, maybe 16. 15 actually, probably. Yeah, I think he was 15 when we met.
They bonded quickly due to the fact that they were the youngest kids in those online communities who were actually making music well. At the time, Hugo could speak some English, but not fluently, so he improved his English largely so that he could communicate better with Porter. They saw each other as friendly competition and would both push each other to level up their production. So we all probably know about their Shelter collab, but they actually collaborated on a track back when Hugo was using the Wayne Mont moniker and Porter was going by Echo Wraith. It's called Back in the Game, Wayne Mont plus Echo Wraith Remix Edit. Sometime between 2011 and 2014, once they were going by Madeon and Porter Robinson, they collaborated on at least 2 tracks that were never released. The tracks were called Praise for That and OSTTT. Allegedly, their Shelter collab was originally intended to be an album that would contain both of these tracks, but they decided to stick with it being a single. Now, somewhere along in those early days, Hugo decided that he wanted to make a career out of music. He said that he was driven by the fear of higher education and a normal life, so much so that he began sabotaging his grades at school to force himself into an unconventional path. He ended up getting kicked out of school as a 16-year-old due to his failing grades. Now, this was right around the same time that he started up the Madeon project in 2010. At that point, he still hadn't shown his parents any of his music. They knew he was making music, but he was embarrassed by his taste, so he kept it to himself and the people who knew about him online. He didn't even share his music with any of his friends. However, once he started getting tracks signed, he started sharing his music with his parents, and that did not take very long. He wanted to show his parents that music could be a real job so that they wouldn't force him back into school, so he began doing ghost production work and competing in remix contests that offered cash prizes. One of those remix contests was for Pendulum's famous track, The Island. Another winner was originally selected because Madeon had broken the rules of the competition since he was 16 and the minimum age requirement was 18. But Rob Swire from Pendulum loved it and decided to bend the rules in order to declare Madeon as the winner. Soon after, Madeon was receiving tons of remix offers, and people were literally showing up at the front door of his parents' house asking to sign him. Everything happened very fast for Madeon, and within months of being kicked out of school, he had already signed a record deal and was touring in Australia. Things got even crazier for him in 2011 when he released his famous pop culture mashup video. It's a video of him performing a genius mashup of 39 different songs on a Novation launchpad, and the result is ridiculously catchy. The video went viral and got 6 million views in just a few days, and it now has 61 million views. In his 2019 Reddit AMA, he revealed that he had the idea, bought the launchpad, and recorded the video all in the same day. The launchpad became a key staple of his show soon after. At this point in his career as Madeon, he was mostly a remix artist, but he had budding ambitions of releasing original music. Those ambitions were actualized in early 2012 when he released his debut single, Icarus. His original plans were to release a debut EP at the end of 2011, but he scrapped the idea and decided to release the tracks as singles in 2012. After Icarus, he released Finale, which was followed by The City. It's worth noting that he did release 2 original tracks on SoundCloud and YouTube before the release of Icarus, but they weren't fully distributed official releases. Those tracks are called For You and Shuriken. That same year, he performed at Lollapalooza, and his performance caught the attention of Lady Gaga's team. They asked him to be one of the opening acts for the North American leg of her Born This Way ball tour at the beginning of 2013. This was a huge moment for him because he was a huge fan of Lady Gaga. He used her song Alejandro in his pop culture mashup, and he even skipped school to buy the Born This Way album. So he used the opportunity to show her one of his instrumental tracks called Revenge in hopes that they could collaborate on something. It worked out for him, and they began working on some songs for her art pop album. He produced a total of 4 songs for the album, though one didn't make the cut. He produced Mary Jane Holland, Gypsy, and Venus, as well as Tinnitus, which is the track that didn't make it onto the album. He also produced 2 songs on her 2020 Chromatica album, 911 and Plastic Doll.
But it was cool to be like, hey, like this is a real legit Lady Gaga single with a cool music video, and those are my drums, my bass sound, and my chord change. And I just inserted my little contribution to pop history, and like 15-year-old me would think it's the coolest thing in the world, and 26-year-old me still think it's the coolest thing in the world. So super grateful for that experience, you know.
While we're on the topic of him producing for other artists, it's worth mentioning that he has done work for many other artists, including Ellie Goulding, Muse, Coldplay, and Two Door Cinema Club. One other thing that I want to mention is that we almost got a Madeon remix of a Michael Jackson song, but it fell through. Sony asked him to do the remix, but they wanted to deliver the stems via hard drive and have a Sony representative in the studio while Madeon was working. He didn't like the idea of that, and he decided to turn it down. And while we're on the topic of remixing famous artists, here's another interesting fact about Madeon. In 2010, he was selected as one of 20 winners for a remix contest of the Plastic Ono Band. For those that don't know, the Plastic Ono Band was formed by John Lennon of the Beatles and his wife Yoko Ono. The band featured a rotating lineup of musicians, including the legendary guitarist Eric Clapton and Beatles drummer Ringo Starr. Unfortunately, Madeon's remix seems to have been scrubbed from the internet. He has had other forms of industry success outside of just producing for other artists and remixes. His music has made it onto countless video games and TV media. In 2012, the popular TV show Dancing with the Stars used his song Icarus, and that song was also used in the racing game Forza Horizon. Finale and Imperium were used in FIFA 13 and FIFA 15, and You're On was in Pro Evolution Soccer 2016. The City appeared in NHL 15 and Need for Speed Most Wanted, and Technicolor was used in Need for Speed Rivals. Finale, as well as his remix of Martin Solveig's The Night Out, were used multiple times on ESPN's Winter X Games 17. In May of 2013, Madeon said in multiple interviews that he had begun working on a debut album. A few months later in August, he released the single Technicolor.
There's a Morse code at the end of the track, and that spells something. And if you go to my website, the website for Technicolor, and type it in, solution being to download the artwork and rename it from a JPEG file to a zip file, and it's actually secretly an archive. And when you extract that, you get 2 more visual files, and when you print them, layer them and put them against the sun, it will merge together and show you another Morse code that you can then translate and to get the next piece of the story. I thought no one's ever gonna solve that in a million years. And I put out the track, and 2 hours later, maybe less than that, was solved.
In early 2014, he released the track Cut the Kid, which he said was created sometime around 2011 or 2012. Fans had known about that track for a while because he had teased it on his tours as early as 2012. For the release, fans had to solve a puzzle in order to get a free digital copy. Also in early 2014, he took time off from touring to pour all of his attention into finishing the album. In June of 2014, Porter Robinson did a Reddit AMA and said, "I've heard Madeon's album and it's fucking magnificent. I've been singing one of them all goddamn day." Madeon later confirmed on Twitter that the specific song that Porter was talking about was Pay No Mind, which featured Passion Pit. Months later, Madeon released Imperium, the lead single from the debut album Adventure. Through May of the following year, 5 singles from the album were released, all leading up to the full album drop. You're On, followed by Pay No Mind, which was the track that Porter had referenced in his AMA. Then there was Home, and then Nonsense, which featured Mark Foster of Foster the People. Each of the singles featured Madeon's own artwork, with the track names written in the Imperial alphabet, which is a language he created himself. 1 week before the official album release, Madeon launched the Adventure Machine. It's an interactive web app where you can play with different stems from the album to create new mashups. It's insanely fun to play with, and it's still active to this day. Just Google Madeon Adventure Machine if you want to play with it. In March of 2015, the full album was released. Just like the singles, the album art was also done by Madeon. The album reached number 43 on the US Billboard 200, and it landed the top spot on the US Dance/Electronic Albums chart. Soon after the release, he embarked on his first ever headline tour, Adventure Live. He also played a massive set at Coachella that year, where he debuted his track Albatross, which has never been officially released. If you're a big fan of either Madeon or Porter Robinson, then you know all about the release of Shelter in 2016. We're gonna dive into that in just a second, but I want to point something else out first that also happened in 2016. So Madeon is a huge fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, specifically the GameCube game Sonic Adventure Battle 2. And apparently the Sonic community manager is also a huge Madeon fan, so much so that in 2016 he posted this image that led people to believe that Madeon was working on a soundtrack for a Sonic game. Madeon came out and said that he had nothing to do with it, but he would have loved to work on a project for his favorite game franchise. He actually has made music for a video game though, but we'll get into that after we dive into the Shelter era. On August 11th, 2016, Madeon and his longtime friend Porter Robinson dropped Shelter, which featured vocal chops Porter had made while recording Worlds, accompanied by Madeon's lead vocal. The track was released alongside a music video which was made in collaboration with the Japanese animation studio A1 Pictures. Here's an excerpt from the Shelter Wikipedia page talking about the video. The film follows 17-year-old Rin, who lives alone inside a futuristic simulation. She maintains control of the simulation and the virtual world around her through a tablet on which she can draw scenes that the world around her will then create in a three-dimensional environment. She continues on like this for many years, living a peaceful but lonely life. All of a sudden, she experiences scenes before her that she hasn't created. As an invisible observer, Ren witnesses her life as a 10-year-old child living in Tokyo. Through a series of newsreels and images, it is learned that at this time, a moon-sized planetary object is on a collision course with Earth. Ren's father Shigeru dedicates a large portion of his time to the happiness of his daughter, but in the meantime builds a single-passenger spacecraft with life support for Ren to escape. He also successfully wipes any memory of him or Earth from her mind, instead programming these and a letter from him to come to her later in life in hope that she would better understand the circumstance once she has matured. Just before the planet makes contact, he connects her to the simulation and launches the ship carrying her into space, where she has been for the past 7 years. The track and video was instantly adored by fans and received global recognition. The song was even used in FIFA 17. Porter and Madeon have both come out and publicly said that they don't plan to collaborate beyond Shelter. The timing just felt right as their respective styles were overlapping at the time. Soon after the release, they embarked on a 43-show tour with stops in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. I was lucky enough to be at the very first show of that tour, and it stands out as one of my favorite shows that I've ever been to. The tour finished with their final performance at Coachella in 2017. Okay, so remember how earlier I mentioned that Madeon had made music for a video game? Well, his brother is a game developer and released a game in 2017 called Anarcute, and Madeon was recruited for the soundtrack. However, he used a different name. The tracks were produced under a new moniker called Namade. He produced a total of 22 tracks for the game, and you can find them all on YouTube. In January of 2018, Madeon announced that he had moved to Los Angeles to finish his upcoming album. In March of the following year, he announced that his new live show would debut at Lollapalooza later that year. He made it clear that it wasn't a DJ set, it would be a totally new live show. Just 2 months later, on May 28th, he said that he would be previewing a new single the following day through a new website, goodfaith.world. The very next day, the website was updated with a new video for his single, All My Friends. The video contained the location of 4 record stores in 4 cities: Los Angeles, New York, Alisund, and Nantes. Each record store was issued just 2 copies of the single on clear 7-inch vinyls. The following day, on May 30th, the full single was released on YouTube. A little over a month later, on July 10th, Madeon premiered the first episode of Good Faith Radio on Beats Radio on Apple Music. In the episode, he revealed the second single from the upcoming album, Dream Dream Dream, and he also played some of his fans' music that they had sent in. Not much later, the live show was finally revealed at Lollapalooza, followed by headline shows in London, Amsterdam, and Paris. On October 29th, he revealed that his new album, Good Faith, would be released on November 15th. The day after the announcement, on October 30th, the North American leg of the Good Faith tour kicked off in Vancouver and went through December 14th, where it ended in Austin. In an interview with NPR, Madeon said that the album was based on his relationship to joy and his mental health. He said, "I wanted to make music that was celebratory, but that hinted at the fact that joy had to have been reclaimed and fought for a little bit." The album received a Grammy nomination for Best Dance/Electronic Album in 2021, which was Madeon's first ever Grammy nomination. In May of 2020, Madeon played a DJ set for the virtual Secret Sky Festival, and he debuted a new track called The Prince. He released the song in August of that year alongside an ARG. Once the puzzle was solved, a link to a store was unlocked where you could purchase a 6-track EP called 12/12/2017, but it's also referred to as Celine. It's a very dark EP that sounds nothing like Madeon's usual tracks, and only 200 copies exist, making it extremely rare and basically unattainable. Good luck convincing someone to sell theirs because it probably won't happen. The text on the back of the vinyl says, "On the 12th of December 2017, music made me feel nothing. I made some anyway out of anger for 24 hours. If albums testify eras, this is just a day." Luckily, if you didn't get a copy, the EP has been leaked and you can listen to it on YouTube. A fan posted an interesting exchange he had with Madeon on Instagram regarding the EP. In it, Madeon says, "Crazy. To me, the real ending is the rip people will make so that everybody gets to share. I don't think having the vinyl is all that important. I hope people don't feel excluded because they don't have their own copy. It's just a piece of plastic and cardboard. The art, story, and memory is what's substantial. I think if I had produced a lot of copies, it would have defeated the intention. Something intimate, secret, and humble. The papercraft puzzle was so cool to me. Thematically, I love things existing in the real world, even if I don't have them. Like, I love knowing the existence of the Frank Ocean Blonde vinyl or the Black Lotus Magic card. When I really think about it, it's just cardboard and plastic, but I like that they're magical. I have neither of these objects. I would think about them less if I had them. I know it's a bit of an abstract concept. So I didn't explain the full release breakdown of 12/12/2017 because it's insanely complex, but someone did a great job of breaking it down on Reddit if you want to learn more. I'll add a link to the post in the video description. In September of 2021, Madeon premiered his new Good Faith Forever live show at Second Sky Festival in Oakland. On April 22nd of 2022, he released Love You Back, which he had been playing live for years. In June of this year, he released his most recent single, Gonna Be Good. He has a handful of upcoming shows, and on November 17th this year, he will be playing his final Good Faith Forever show at the Shrine in Los Angeles. It has been nearly 4 years since the release of the Good Faith album, and it feels like Madeon is ready to close this chapter of the project. It's always a bittersweet time when such a renowned artist closes the door on such an iconic era, but it's something that must happen in order for new growth to emerge. We don't know what's next for Madeon, and maybe he doesn't even know, but I think we all know that whatever comes next is gonna be good.